everyone. Today's short story is called Boundaries. It was first published by Earth and Lamb Journal in 2015, and it is a short story that revolves around the Assamese people's perennial concern with Bangladeshis and looks at how we, as human beings, negotiate with boundaries, personal boundaries, socio-religious boundaries, political boundaries. So here it is. Mother had the habit of sitting in the veranda after lunch was done and the dishes washed. She would just sit there idle as the afternoon sun made one and all lazy and kill her time looking at those few people out there on the streets at this hour. One such afternoon, the petite Kolita auntie walked in through the gates as Mother sat fanning herself with a newspaper. "Oh, the power cut must have happened just as I left home," she uttered as she made her way to the veranda. "Yes, just now," Mother confirmed as she walked up to her. Then showing Kolita auntie to a chair, Mother went inside and fetched a botta of pan tamul, Banarasi betel leaves to be precise, and areca nuts from Shillong that made your head spin. There was a packet of Baba Zarda 120, the tobacco Mother preferred. Both the women made themselves pan and put it in their mouth. "My back is hurting as though it will break," Kolita auntie told Mother, picking up the cane fan from the small square table by her side. "That ungrateful bitch Fatima? It's this category of people you just can't trust. Left me without notice." When we moved to Beltola in the 1980s, it was still a sleepy part of Guwahati then, and the land behind our house was vacant. Within a decade, a small group of Bangladeshis, which had grown in number with the years, had moved into that plot of land and built a colony of small huts with sheds made of hay or tin. Fatima lived with her husband Ali in one of those huts right behind our wall. "Oh, then how are you managing? Your house is so huge and you have such a regular stream of visitors," Mother showed concern. "Ask me. I've been doing everything for the last 1 week. I tell you, these Bangladeshis, may they be damned, such attitude they have developed. Are we minting money that they want a hike every 3 months? Have you seen these colonies that have come up all around?" Mother nodded. She thought of the plot of land behind her house. She also thought of the road to Upper Assam a year ago when she had gone to Dibrugarh to attend the funeral rites of the wife of one of her brothers. It was Rubul Mama's wife. The day began on a very happy note. Rubul Mama's son had narrowly missed a rank among the top 20 in the state high school living exam, and since it was no small deal, the household exhibited nothing short of festivity. The choicest of fish was brought from the shores of the Brahmaputra so that the relatives who had gathered on hearing such grand news could participate in the celebration. The proud mother cooked the best fish preparation ever. The men were fed at the dining table in the small dining room that was constructed a few years ago. Then the women ate. They ate at the spacious kitchen where everybody used to dine in the past, seated on wooden piras, plates on the ground that had been mopped a few seconds ago. The eldest daughter-in-law of the household, Don Mama's wife, helped Rubul Mama's wife attend to the other ladies first, and then they sat down with their food. There was no one else in the kitchen when the two of them began eating. The other women had gathered at the veranda outside for some pan tamul. The men were already far away in that L-shaped house, strolling outside or chatting in the drawing room. Rubul Mama's wife was relishing the fish she made. "It must be the best I've ever cooked, isn't it, Baido?" she asked Don Mama's wife, glowing with pride at her son's achievement. The older daughter-in-law slurped and said, "Absolutely," when just a few seconds after, the tragedy struck. With the next bite of the fish, Rubul Mama's wife went red in the face. She held her throat and coughed hard. Don Mama's wife thumped her back, made her gulp lumps of rice and thick slices of banana, but nothing helped. The cough soon turned into wheezing, and Rubul Mama's wife collapsed. The women gathered at the veranda were still chatting when this happened because it is a sight fish eaters grow up seeing. The fishbone gets stuck in the throat, a little coughing ensues, and then it becomes better, and in a few hours, although sometimes it even takes a day, the bone dissolves or dislodges from where it is stuck. Rubul Mama's wife, though, choked and died within minutes. Anyway, when mother was visiting Dibrugarh on this grave occasion, traveling by bus on the highway, she noticed how the fields on either side of the road had changed into ugly settlements, marring the beautiful landscape. Remembering this, mother nodded emphatically when Kolita auntie threw the "Have you seen these colonies that have come up all around" at her. Then Kolita auntie went about cursing Hiteshwar Saikia for unleashing the Bangladeshis on them when he was in power, for giving them land and voter identity cards. Mother, who I'm sure never took an interest in the current affairs of the nation, also parroted a few bits she had heard here and there about their social religious identity being at stake. After all, mother whispered, as if afraid that someone might hear what she had to say, afraid because it was not really her opinion and she had no evidence to support her statement. This is Bangladesh's design to make Assam an Islamic state. Kolita auntie's batteries charged up more and she gave mother another half-an-hour lecture on how right she was. Then in a while she got up to leave and parted with the concern, coming back to the issue of Fatima, what would now happen with the Bangladeshi maids acting so pricey, and because the Assamese, with Bangladeshis now doing most of the manual labor, were too lazy to work as domestic help. At first, it was Kolita auntie whose complaints against Bangladeshi maids occupied the rest of the session on Wednesday afternoons at the Beltola Namghar, the neighborhood public worship place for women, after the prayer rituals got over. And then the other women contributed their bit as well to the overall discussion on the miseries inflicted upon by Bangladeshi maids. The Namghar, with thatched walls and roofs, began to draw less fervor towards the gods than the discussions on Bangladeshi maids those days. Someone had apparently changed her maid 4 times in 6 months because all of them were slowly making spoons, petticoats, blouses and earrings disappear from the house. Someone else was finding it difficult to get a maid who would mop their 3-storied house. Too little pay and too much work, the maids who came looking for work said. And so, for several months, the only subject of discussion at the Namghar was the Bangladeshi maids, the price, the high price they quoted, and the loss of the golden era as many full-time Assamese and Bihari domestic helps left their employers in Guwahati on realizing that they earned much less than the Bangladeshi maids who came for an hour or two. Soon the complaints started bordering on the political. They will not learn our language, someone once remarked as she placed the horai with the offerings of sprouts and fruits in front of the pira on which rested the sacred text Nampuha. They will work for us, but we will have to learn their language. Soon they will teach us how to do the namaz, and we Assamese are so shameless we will even learn that like the way we have learned the language. And all nodded as if all Assamese were Hindus, as if it were the people struggling at the lowest end of the socio-political ladder who shaped the destinies of a land. It was raining cats and dogs when Fatima came to her house about a month after Kolita auntie's visit. She squatted on the floor where mother settled on a chair. My husband has abandoned me for some other woman, she told mother without a hint of emotion in her voice. It was mother, rather, who exhibited some anxiety. Oh, when did this happen? Last week, Fatima said again in that flat voice of hers. Mother looked at the pale, painfully thin woman sitting on the floor in front of her and asked, What does your husband do? He has taken a friend's rickshaw on rent. Rickshawala? Mother murmured. Yes, he ran away with the friend's wife. On that rickshaw? No, he left the rickshaw behind. And here Fatima broke down. The friend came to my house last night. He was quite mad. Said that my husband ran away with his wife because of me. Tell me, Baido, she pleaded. What have I done to make my husband run away with another woman? She wept with dignity. Somehow I found it weird because I had thought women of her class only howled. She rubbed her nose with the pallu of her sari and continued, I have no idea what to do. There are 5 little children I have to tend to, plus another 6 children from his first wife. First wife? Yes. He married me saying there was no love left between him and his first wife and brought me here from across the border. I didn't want to come, but he promised me the moon. Once we reached this place, his first wife threatened to kill me every day. Finally, she ran away with another rickshawala to Nagaon, leaving all her children behind. What is the story of your lives, huh? Mother exclaimed in exasperation. Do you have no other business than running around with each other's husbands? Fatima ignored the question and asked Mother if she needed a part-time maid. When Mother said no, she begged her to place her at the Kolita household again. I shouldn't have left without notice, she admitted. And then she begged Mother for some monetary help. I will return the money as soon as I can. Mother thought of the 200 rupees she had kept aside for some shopping. She took out the bunch of keys tucked at her waist and fiddled with it for a while. Then she went in and fetched 2 10-rupee notes. This is all I have at home, she announced, holding it up to Fatima, who expectantly got up from the floor when she saw Mother approaching. Fatima took the notes, one of which had a strip of white sellotape over Gandhi, and stood there for a long time. Mother stood there too, party to that awkward silence. And then, with the speed of lightning, Fatima rushed out of the gates, never to be seen again. Fatima's husband Ali, a lean fellow who looked younger than his 52 years, wore a netted white banyan over his chocolate skin and a tattered pair of trousers while boarding the bus with Hasina, who was not yet his wife, to Borpeta town. From there, they would catch another bus to the village Patpaukhi that was a little further away across the river Nokonda. They travelled by a local bus, both sitting up on the seats, which made their spines stiff. Hasina, clad in a shimmering yellow sari made of some cheap material, peered into the distance out of the window at the vast fields as the bus raced past empty fields. Her wind-kissed hair swept over her beautiful face, and her 20-year-old body shone like a polished bronze sculpture. Her light eyes sparked satisfactorily at the sights. She experienced a strange pleasure of freedom, something she had not experienced ever since that husband of hers had brought her over to the congested colony at Beltola, where houses meant rooms and privacy was all about a sari or chadar flung over a string as people huddled together in the same room. Looking out of the window, she felt like it was her and not the bus that was racing past the empty fields. Ali had told her 2 nights ago that he would take her away secretly from the small damp room she shared with her husband and his brother's family to a proper house in the middle of a field in Patpaukhi. And how do you know of it? She had asked. From a cousin who stays there, he had said. 6 or 7 hours later, both of them were at West Goherpam in Patpaukhi at Ali's cousin's, a 3-room mud house with a thatched roof right in the middle of a field as Ali had promised. Chickens and ducks waddled about the courtyard. Pigeons picked at the grains that were scattered on the ground in the corner of the courtyard. Ali and his cousin chatted over tea. Meanwhile, Hasina found her way to the kitchen and asked the cousin's wife what she could help with. She was assigned a task. The next morning, Ali left with his cousin to work in the field, which belonged to the Damodar Dev Hotra. The Hotras had a lot of land, and since the times of the British, it had been exempt from tax. The Hotra men, the Bhakots, were too busy with religious activities, so the villagers had been allowed to build houses upon the land as well as to work in the fields. All they had to do was present a share of their yield to the Hotra. That is how several neighborhoods had emerged all over the Hotra land. When the first few Bangladeshis arrived, they were not perceived as a threat. Slowly, their numbers increased. After some time, a masjid came up around the area where the Bangladeshis had built their houses. That is our land, the Bhakots protested within the confines of the Hotra. The few Assamese Muslim families who had been living in the West Goherpam area for ages didn't approve of it either. This is not right, they said. They went to the masjid at the outskirts of the village whose foundation had been laid by one of their ancestors. But the Bangladeshis couldn't go there because the Assamese Muslim families refused to interact with them. Ali didn't work just in the Khatra fields. He also became quite popular with the only mason in the village who was forever looking for a hand. Ali's brief stint in Guwahati as a construction laborer before he took his friend's rickshaw on rent proved most useful in Patbauchi. That day, when Ali, perched on his cousin's second-hand bicycle, was cycling away to the Damodar Dev Khatra Khatradikar's house, a meeting was being held at the Khatra. The Khatradikar's house was in the vicinity of the Khatra, and since the Khatradikar happened to be their legitimate religious leader, his house was considered as sacred as the Khatra itself. Not everybody was allowed beyond its outer courtyard, but that day, Ali was called by the mason to work for the construction of a new mandir in the inner courtyard of the house. The old mandir's age-old roof and walls had ultimately caved in due to seepage and moisture. The Khatradikar had shifted the idol of Lord Krishna and the sacred texts to another room and decided to keep them there until a new mandir was constructed. Ali jumped off his cycle, turning a bend, as he caught the first glimpses of the Khatra. He then walked the entire road with his cycle by his side, head bowed, until he reached the Khatradikar's house. From the outer courtyard, where he rested his cycle against the wall, he could see the Khatradikar and about 10 other old men from the village, dressed in white dhotis and white selling sadors covering their upper bodies, sitting on mats inside the prayer hall. The hall was open from 3 sides, and Ali could see the men chatting. Apparently, they were through with the prayer rituals. They were discussing how the village had changed over time, how Bangladeshis were now flooding in, how it had all started with the 2 or 3 Hindu families who had consumed a cow unknowingly. Of course, they didn't remember when the incident actually took place. But the story went that when only Hindus lived in the world, a terrible flood cast a deadly gloom over the village. People and animals were dying without food when, one day, a carcass came flowing with the water. A few families no one could ever remember saw the carcass and mistook it for the remains of a deer. Starving, they quickly cleaned it and put it in the cooking pot. The next morning, when the neighbors heard of what had happened, they investigated the hooves of the carcass, green with envy, and pronounced that it was a cow and not a deer. And since those few families had committed an unpardonable sin, the villagers declared them as Musalmans. The humidity in the air soared. The weather was becoming unbearable to the men sitting under the tin shed at the Khatra. Still, they continued to recount the tale of how Patbauchi got its first Muslims, while Ali made his way to the inner courtyard of the Khatradikar's house to create a new mandir for the idol of Lord Krishna and the sacred text. Thank you for listening.